You're 27, sitting in the driver's seat of a car you don't own. 3 years of $489 a month. You do the math, $17,604 paid, zero equity, and in 2 years you'll hand it back and start over. Same cycle, newer car, longer debt. You sit there for a minute, engine off, parking lot of your apartment complex. That's the night you decided to buy something used, pay cash, and keep it. What that decision actually cost you, and what it quietly built, took 10 years to see fully. The car nobody noticed. You find a 2015 Civic on Craigslist. 61,000 miles, one owner, silver. A small scratch on the rear bumper that the guy swears happened in a parking lot. You drive 40 minutes to look at it. You bring a friend who knows cars. Your friend crawls underneath, checks the frame, starts it cold, and drives it around the block. He says it's clean. You pay $10,500 cash. No financing, no dealership, no 5-year loan on a depreciating asset. You write a personal check, sign the title, and drive home in a car that is yours, fully, from the first mile. The next Monday, you're in the office and your coworker Ryan pulls into the lot in a leased Tiggan. New, deep blue, he's paying $611 a month for it. He mentions it the way people mention rent. Just a fixed cost of existing. A few weeks later, your cousin texts a photo of the F-15. Oh, he just financed. $730 a month. 72 months. He's proud. It looks good. You don't say anything, because here's what nobody says out loud. The car payment, in America, has become the most normalized financial mistake most people make. This year, the average new car payment hits $767 a month. More than 1 in 5 new car buyers is locked into a payment of over $1,000. The average loan term is pushing 6 years, 70 months, on a vehicle that starts losing value the moment it leaves the lot. People are borrowing more than they earn in a year to own something that will be worth half that by the time they finish paying for it, and almost all of them will do it again. Before the loan is even paid off, they'll trade in with negative equity, meaning they owe more than the car is worth, and roll that balance into the next loan. The debt carries forward, invisible, buried in the new monthly number. The average borrower who finances with negative equity ends up paying roughly $6,000 more in interest over the life of the loan than someone who doesn't. Most of them have no idea. You knew some of this the night you sat in the parking lot. Not all of it, not the exact numbers, but enough. Enough to feel the shape of the trap. So, you bought the Civic. And then you did one other thing. You opened a brokerage account and set up an automatic transfer. $500 a month, first of the month, before anything else moved. You put it in a low-cost index fund that tracks the S&P 500. You didn't time the market. You didn't research individual stocks. You just pointed the money somewhere with a long track record and told it to go every month without asking you. The $500 wasn't arbitrary. It was roughly the gap between what you were paying on the lease and what the Civic was costing you to own. Insurance, gas, and one oil change every few months. The car was cheap to run, so the money that used to be left for the payment, you just redirected it. Same behavior, different destination. That first transfer was $500. No notification arrived to tell you it was a good idea. No one at work asked about it. Ryan was talking about the new features on his Tiggan. Your cousin was posting photos of the truck. You were moving $500 into an account that nobody could see. That's the whole setup. Nothing dramatic about it. You bought a used car with cash, you kept your expenses low, and you automated the difference into an investment account. 3 decisions, made once, that you mostly didn't have to think about again. What you didn't understand yet, what takes years to actually feel is what happens when that kind of discipline runs into the long middle. Because the math is the easy part. The easy part is the spreadsheet. The hard part is every parking lot, every conversation, every year that passes while everyone around you is upgrading and you're still driving the same car. That's where the real cost of the decision shows up. And it shows up for a long time. The quiet that compounds. Year 1 is fine. The Civic runs clean. You change the oil, rotate the tires, and handle the small things before they become big things. The $500 moves on the first of every month without you touching it. Life feels manageable in a way it didn't before. quieter around the edges, like a noise you didn't notice until it stopped. In year 2, the paint on the hood starts to oxidize, a pale, chalky patch, maybe 6 inches across. You notice it every morning when you walk out. You don't fix it. In year 3, Ryan gets a new car. Not the Tigon. He traded it in early, rolled the remaining balance into a 60-month loan on a loaded Camry XSE. He mentions the payment once, casually. $694 a month. You nod. You don't do the math out loud, but you do it in your head. He's been making a car payment for 6 straight years. Different cars, same debt, never a gap between them. In year 4, the AC starts making a sound on cold starts. A low rattle goes away after a minute. Your mechanic says it's the compressor mount, minor, easy to monitor. You monitor it. The rattle becomes background noise. You stop hearing it after a while. Year 5, your cousin refinances the truck. The payment wasn't working, he says. He stretched it to 84 months. That's 7 years. The truck will have 90,000 miles on it before he finishes paying for it. When you look it up later, quietly, you find that more than 20% of auto loans currently being issued run 84 months or longer. It's not unusual anymore. It's becoming the norm. The industry's answer to cars that cost too much is simply to spread the pain out further, until the monthly number feels manageable even when the total doesn't. Year 6, you go to a work conference in Austin. You valet the Civic. The attendant doesn't say anything. You say something anyway, something half joking about the age of the car, and regret it immediately. You apologized for a paid-off car with $38,000 sitting behind it in a brokerage account. You think about that on the drive home. Year 7, your sister buys a house and asks if you can help her move. You drive the Civic 4 trips with the back seat folded down, boxes stacked to the ceiling. The car does exactly what you need it to do. It occurs to you, somewhere between the 3rd and 4th trip, that you have never once needed this car to be impressive. You've only ever needed it to work, and it has, every single time. Meanwhile, the account grows in the way compound interest grows, slowly at first, then in a way that starts to feel disproportionate to what you're putting in. By year 7, the balance is somewhere around $57,000. You're still transferring $500 a month, but the account itself is now generating returns on a base large enough to matter. The growth is starting to outpace your contributions in certain months. You check it maybe once a quarter. You don't touch it. This is the part no one talks about when they talk about financial discipline. They talk about the number at the end. They don't talk about the 7 years of parking in the back of the lot, of driving past dealerships without stopping, of watching people around you cycle through cars like they're leasing furniture, of doing a thing quietly that produces no external signal that it's working. There's no moment in year 4 where someone pulls you aside and says you're doing the right thing. There's no notification. The account just grows and the car just runs, and the years just pass, and then something happens that you didn't plan for. Not a celebration, not a milestone. Something that arrives without warning and demands everything you've built. And in one night, you understand what the long middle was actually for. That's when the breaking point comes, and everything you've quietly accumulated suddenly has a name. What $91,400 actually means. It's a Thursday in March. You're at work when your dad calls. He doesn't call in the middle of the day. You step outside and he tells you your mom is at the hospital. Chest pains. They're running tests. He says it's probably nothing, but his voice says something different. You leave. You just leave. You tell your manager you have a family emergency and you walk to the parking lot, get in the Civic, and drive. The hospital is 40 minutes away. You don't remember most of the drive. You park in the short-term lot, the expensive one closest to the entrance, and you don't think about the cost for a single second. You walk in and find your dad sitting in a plastic chair in the cardiac unit waiting room, still in his work clothes, holding a paper cup of coffee he isn't drinking. You sit next to him. You wait. The tests take hours. A doctor comes out twice, once to explain what they're looking at, once to say they want to keep her overnight for observation. Your dad asks questions. You write down the answers on your phone because you know neither of you will remember them correctly later. The waiting room empties and fills and empties again. Someone's television in a nearby room plays the same news loop 3 times. Around 9 p.m., You go to the vending machine. You buy 2 bags of chips and a coffee that neither of you will finish. You sit back down next to your dad and you look at your phone, not at anything specific, just looking. And then you open your banking app, not to check it, not for any reason you could explain, just something to do with your hands. The brokerage balance is $91,400. You close the app. You look at your dad. He's staring at the door to the hallway, the one the doctors come through. You open the app again. $91,400. 10 years of $500 a month, sitting there, quiet, the way it's always been quiet. You haven't touched it once. You've barely looked at it, but it's there. And in this specific moment, in this specific plastic chair, it means something you couldn't have named when you started. It means that whatever the doctor says tomorrow morning, whatever the next few weeks look like, whatever your mom needs, you are not going to have to choose between helping her and paying rent. You're not going to put anything on a credit card and spend the next year paying interest on a crisis. You're not going to ask anyone for money, or delay anything, or make the kind of calculation that people in emergencies have to make when there's nothing behind them. The $91,400 doesn't cure anything. It doesn't make the waiting room less hard, or the paper coffee cup less cold, or your dad's face less tired. But it is the ground under your feet. And right now, that's everything. Your mom is discharged the next afternoon. Cardiac arrhythmia. Manageable, medication, follow-up appointments, lifestyle adjustments. Serious, but stable. You drive your parents home. You stop at a pharmacy on the way, pick up the prescriptions, and pay for them at the counter without looking at the total. On the drive home alone, 40 minutes back in the Civic, you think about what that account represents. Not the number itself, the years behind the number. The Civic, with the chalky paint and the AC rattle. The valet in Austin. The 84-month loans you didn't take. The $500 that moved every first of the month while nobody noticed and nobody congratulated you. And nothing about it felt like it was working. It was working. The whole time, it was working. And then you think about Ryan, about where he is right now, what his account looks like, what's behind him if something like this lands on him without warning. You already know the answer, and that's where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore, because his side of this story looks completely different from yours. The cost nobody announces. Ryan isn't careless. That's the thing you keep coming back to. He shows up to work on time, does his job well, and pays his bills. He's not someone who blows money on obvious things. He doesn't gamble. He doesn't have a spending problem in the way people usually mean when they say that. He just did what the system told him to do, in the order it told him to do it, and a decade later, he's standing in a place he didn't intend to be. You find out about his situation gradually, the way you find out about most things with people you see every day. A comment here, a number dropped in passing there. His car payment is currently $694 a month on the Camry. He's got 38 months left on the loan. Before that, it was the Tiggan. Before that, it was a Mazda he leased fresh out of college. 10 years, 3 cars, never a month without a payment. He told you once, almost as a joke, that he wouldn't even know what to do if he didn't have a car payment. It had just always been there. What's also always been there, invisible underneath the payments, is the interest. When you carry negative equity from one car into the next, which Ryan has done twice, you're not starting fresh. You're adding the debt you still owe on the old car to the loan for the new one. The monthly payment looks manageable because the term gets longer, but the total you owe keeps climbing. Currently, borrowers who finance with negative equity pay roughly $6,000 more in interest over the life of their loan than borrowers who don't. Most of them never see that number. It doesn't appear on the window sticker. It accumulates quietly in the background while the car sits in the driveway looking fine. Ryan's car looks fine. What doesn't look fine is the rest of it. He mentioned a few months back that he'd been leaning on his credit card more than usual. His refrigerator broke in January, a $1,400 repair, and he put it on the card because there wasn't enough in checking to cover it comfortably alongside the car payment and rent. The card carries an interest rate just above 24%. If he pays the minimum each month, that $1,400 repair costs him closer to $1,900 by the time it's actually gone. This is how it compounds on the wrong side. The car payment crowds out the savings. The savings gap means the next emergency goes on the card. The card balance grows with interest. The interest payment crowds out more savings. Nothing dramatic ever happens. No single decision breaks him. It's just friction, month after month, with nothing behind him to absorb it. The median household income for someone in their early 30s in this country is currently around $90,000 a year. At $694 a month, Ryan's car payment alone represents nearly 9% of his gross income. Before insurance, before gas, before the credit card minimum, when you add the full cost of vehicle ownership, it's closer to 15% of what he earns before taxes. He's never sat down and calculated that. Most people haven't. The number doesn't announce itself. It just quietly takes every month and leaves less room for everything else. You're spending a fraction of that. The Civic costs you insurance, maintenance, and gas. Maybe 3% of your income in a given year, if that. The gap between what Ryan's transportation costs him and what yours costs you, redirected every month for 10 years into an index fund, is now sitting at $91,400. He doesn't know about the account. You've never mentioned it. It's not a conversation you know how to have without it sounding like something it isn't. But you think about it. You think about what it would take for Ryan to get to the same place. How many years, how many payments he'd have to stop making, how much ground he'd need to recover before he could even start. That's when it becomes clear that the Civic was never really about the car. And what happens next proves it. What 10 years actually built. The Civic hits 140,000 miles on a Tuesday in November. You notice it on the highway, watch the odometer turn, and then just keep driving. There's no feeling attached to it. It's a number on a dashboard. The car doesn't know. The car just runs. Your mechanic is a guy named Dave. You've been going to him for 6 years. Same shop, same bay, same coffee maker in the waiting area that's been broken the entire time you've been going there. Dave knows this car. He knows you don't want to be upsold. He tells you what it needs, tells you what can wait, and lets you decide. At 140,000 miles, it needs front struts and a new serpentine belt. Dave says the rest of it is solid. Engine is clean, no rust on the frame, brakes have another year easy. He says if you keep up with it, the car has another 3 or 4 years without anything major. You tell him to do the struts and the belt. $810 total. You pay it and drive away. Here's what that $810 looks like in context. Ryan's car payment this month is $694. Next month, it will be $694. The month after that, $694, and every month for the next 38 months until the loan is done, at which point the car will have enough miles on it that he'll feel the pull to trade it in and start again. Over those 38 months, he'll pay roughly $26,000 in remaining loan payments. You'll pay Dave whatever the Civic needs. Probably $1,500 in total maintenance over the same period, if that. The gap between those two numbers doesn't go into a vacation or a nicer apartment or anything you can point to. It goes back into the brokerage account. $500 a month, same as it's always been. The account is currently at $91,400. At the historical average return of the S&P 500, roughly 10% annually over the long run. That balance is now generating around $9,000 a year on its own, more than your monthly contributions. The money has crossed the line where it's working harder than you are. You didn't announce that moment. You didn't notice it exactly when it happened. You just checked the account one afternoon and understood that something had shifted. This is what 10 years of a boring decision looks like from the inside. Not a windfall, not a lucky stock pick, not a side hustle or a second income or anything that requires a story. Just a used car, a monthly transfer, and enough time for the math to do what math does when you leave it alone. You're not done with the Civic, but you've already thought about what happens when you are. When Dave eventually tells you the repair costs more than the car is worth, because that day will come, and Dave will say it plainly, the way he says everything. You'll go to a used car lot and buy something with 30,000 or 40,000 miles on it, 3 or 4 years old, full cash. No financing, no rolling over anything, no monthly payments starting the cycle again. You've already run the numbers. A clean 2022 or 2023 sedan in good condition runs somewhere between $16,000 and $20,000 at current used car prices. You could write that check tomorrow without touching the investment account, without disrupting anything, without asking anyone for anything. That's what the Civic built. Not just the account balance, not just the absence of debt, the ability to make a major financial decision from a position of actual choice, not managed necessity. Ryan will finance his next car, not because he's irresponsible, because he has no other option available to him. The system worked exactly as designed, and it left him exactly where it intended, needing the next loan to get the next car, every time, indefinitely. You don't have to do that anymore. And the strange thing, the thing that still catches you sometimes when you're driving, is that none of this came from earning more or knowing more or doing anything complicated. It came from one decision made at 27 in a parking lot, in a car you were about to give back, which makes you wonder what else has been quietly building while you weren't looking. The thing that quietly changed. You're still driving the Civic. The paint on the hood is still chalky. The AC still rattles for the first minute on cold mornings. Nothing about it has changed, but something about you has. You stopped needing the car to say something about you somewhere around year 4 or 5. You can't point to the exact moment. It just quietly stopped mattering what the valet thought, what Ryan drives, what your cousin financed. You made your decision. You kept it. The account grew. That's the whole thing. There's no insight underneath it that you missed. No smarter version of this that someone else figured out.